Hello and welcome back to another Just Draw. Today, just like all other Just Draws, I went in with no plan. Really, the only idea I had was I wanted to create something otherworldly, whether that's an alien or something from another dimension or some creature from beyond. I didn't know. I just started off with a distorted face and went from there. Everything that I'm doing was just feeling out the different forms that I thought might look a little interesting. Started out with a bulbous head, eyes, no real nose. At the time I didn't know if I was going to have something else there, or maybe a skull-like hole or something like that. As for the mouth, I knew that I wanted to have something coming out, whether it was a strange swollen tongue or intestines or or I don't know, something, but that was the image that I had, and that's just kind of where it went from there. I also had the idea of either antennae or spider legs coming out of his fleshy skull. That all kind of evolved as I went. The neck was very rough, just basic shapes, and that ended up changing as I went along as well. This whole stage that I'm working on right now is just the roughs. I'm just feeling out the shapes and forms. And as you can see, I switched over from the rough pencils to blue line, or just blue if you will. I call it blue line because if you're old school comic book art kind of person, they used to use these blue line pencils that wouldn't get copied by copy machines. So anyways, that's why I call it blue line. So I switch it from pencil to blue for the rough blueprint, if you will. And then I'm just going through it and finding which shapes and which lines that I like the most. And I'm enhancing it as I go along. As I progressed with this, it wasn't just about creating a character, but also this project became a bit of a chance to experiment and practice with different shading techniques, line techniques, cross-hatching, etc. And as you'll see as I go along, I don't really go back and erase anything. I tried to keep the final layer on these pieces, these Just Draw videos, projects, whatever. I tried to keep them all, whatever is put down on the paper kind of stays for the most part. Sometimes I erase, but I really wanted it to be a chance to experiment with technique, whether it's line, character design, anatomy, different techniques, etc., etc. And in doing so, I try not to edit myself too much. I wanted these just draws to be kind of showcase an example that you don't have to overthink, and a lot of the time if you just draw, just put lines down on paper, great things can happen if you don't force it. Plus, the more lines you put down, the more experience you have, and the more confidence you have in your own work. As I'm going along here, I'm conscious of the lines that I put down, and I'm using my experience, my knowledge of what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what I need to work on, what I'm pretty good at. I find a lot of the time that if you're not careful, you can psych yourself out when you sit down with a blank piece of paper. Whether it's drawing for yourself, drawing for an assignment or a client, it can be tough sometimes if you aren't prepared to draw something that might not work out. You have to get through the suck stage. And I find that most every drawing that anybody does has a suck stage. And if you're wondering, the suck stage is it happens at different points. It can come about when you're drawing something new, or it can just come about in the middle when things go from that initial cool sketch, that you have that brilliant idea in your head and you jot down a few lines and it's like, oh yeah, that would be cool if I drew that. And then when you start working on it and you start realizing, oh, I haven't drawn that before, or oh, this isn't working, or this isn't as good as insert artist name here. But what you have to do is push your way through that, even if that means starting over. Whether it's that day, the next piece of paper, or the next day, or whatever. I encourage you to get through that suck stage. And that piece may turn out nothing like what you planned. And sometimes that's a great thing. Sometimes it's terribly disheartening. If you keep with it and don't quit, you'll find that you'll have gotten that much more experience. Your confidence in your art is that much deeper, and you'll have gotten another page in your drawing pad, another file on your computer filled. You've just drawn that much more. I find that if you go in knowing that there's going to be a point where that piece you're working on is going to look terrible to you, but through experience you know that if you keep at it and keep working on it, it'll get better. That will carry you through. That will encourage you to keep going. And that is confidence that comes with experience, with practice. And I feel that around here, maybe a little bit before this, I believe I had gotten through that suck stage. Suck stage, that sounds like a grunge band. If you or if I were to look at my piece and just look at it for, is it interesting, is it not? I would say it's fairly interesting. But if you were to look at it and grade it on accuracy, for instance, lighting accuracy, I would probably give it, it's kind of early, but you'll see later on, I would give it a C- to a D+. It looks like it was lit by a lot of small lights, kind of each one a little bit different than the other. Yeah, that's okay. I really didn't go in with the conscious thought of perfect lighting on this. I would have done it completely different if I was going to do it that way. If that was my goal. It was not. My goal was to create something from nothing. Just draw. And really the shading I used was more to help display volume rather than show perfect lighting. And there I've turned off the blue layer. So now we're just working on this layer. I'm using Clip Studio Paint, by the way. And this whole piece was done with, it was sketch pencil tool. I can't remember exactly the name of the brush. But yeah, it was just one brush. I don't think I changed the size more than once. little bit more darker line around the border of the piece, face, head, whatever you want to refer it as. That's just kind of give it another little bit of interest by showing it as one whole shape as well. I don't know if it's an interesting fact about my shading. Maybe it's a weird fact. But the technique I use, I learned when I was a kid in school. Do you guys still learn cursive? I've heard either way. I've heard some schools don't do cursive anymore. Anyways, the capital L kind of sweeps back and forth, and I would practice that over and over and over and over and over in my workbook. I don't know, it was meditative, I think. But the swoop back and forth, down to the right and then opposite down to the left, that just kind of stuck, and I end up using that when I use it kind of a much faster version of that when I shade in curved areas. It works pretty good. All right, and we are finishing up. It was a fun piece, crazy, weird, and I liked it. I encourage you guys to just sit down with a blank piece of paper and see what happens. All right, there we are. Enjoy your drawing and see you next time.